guys. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. And for those of you who are repeat offenders, welcome back to the Conscious Basket Show. My name is Samantha McCord, and I am the founder and CEO of Conscious Basket. And on the show, we are going to be interviewing extraordinary people just trying to make a difference in this world and giving you tips on how you can too. So as always, if you like what we do, please subscribe, download a couple episodes, and leave a comment below. I will read them all. But for now, let's just dive right in.
Yeah, in the food desert, those have only increased as time has gone on. And you can see in the low-income communities, the metabolic syndrome, it's safe to say that drive-thrus cause far more deaths than drive-bys in the low-income neighborhoods.
Today, we welcome Robert Schwartz, the founder and CEO of Organic Sprout Box, an at-home DIY sprouting kit. And in the episode, we cover Robert's childhood in Chicago, where he was raised in a low-income neighborhood, what living in a food desert is like, and the impact to children's health over time, taking a stand in community outreach programs, the crime in government redlining, and how Robert created a sustainable way for you to get fresh, organic food every day, especially for those of us who do not have the availability where we live. Let's dive right in. Hey guys, welcome back to the Conscious Basket Show. Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming Robert. He is the founder and CEO of the Organic Sprout Box. Hi, Robert. How are you?
Hey, how you doing? I'm just here in sunny Oregon.
Sunny Oregon. That sounds nice. So today, guys, we're just going to talk a little bit about what Robert went through his childhood and how he got inspired to create the company he has today. So we'll just go ahead and dive right in. So Robert, tell us a little bit about where you grew up in Chicago and a couple of stories that can help the listeners understand, your roots and where you're from.
Sure. So I was born in 1966, and the late 60s were, particularly in Chicago, a time of some real upheaval, not too unlike what we're going through today. And some of my earliest memories is being in kindergarten and walking around on Chicago Avenue, which was a main thoroughfare, with signs that said, "We shall overcome." And of course, I was 4 years oldish, and so I didn't know what that meant, but people were honking and it was a really lot of fun. And in that same school, I was also first introduced to the Black Panthers, which I later found out was a political organization. But in those days, those were the food guys. So the government didn't have breakfast, and probably not even lunch, but those guys would come in and feed us. And that was much appreciated. And I know some of those people still, although they're, getting up there.
So you would come into school every morning and essentially the Black Panthers would be lined up with a good hearty breakfast for you.
Yeah. I mean, you'd sit down and they'd come around. You would get served. So
that's amazing. Okay. And so you grew up in a kind of a rough neighborhood in Chicago.
Yeah, although you don't think of it when you're going through it, because your experience is what you know, and we didn't travel around a lot. But although there were individual, like watching people get shot and stuff like that was, super uncool. Probably the most damaging is, because people are quite resilient emotionally, is this nonstop diet of garbage that you're basically forced to eat. Because for people who aren't aware, if you're in a certain income category, the likelihood of getting an organic tomato is harder than buying an automatic weapon, right? In terms of like location and accessing it.
That's wild.
Yeah. And criminal that it's like that in America to this day. So we're talking about 50 years ago when I went through it. We've had all kinds of, different leaning presidents and legislators and stuff, and they still really haven't figured out how to get nutritious food to people who need nutritious food, which is why you see incredible spikes in metabolic syndrome, which is basically inflammation and leads to almost all chronic diseases. And in Chicago, in particular, in my neighborhood, I later found out that the diabetes rate was double what it is nationally.
Wow.
And I'm
Double.
sure that I didn't live in it's not like there was one neighborhood in the whole world that was like that. The vast majority of low-income urban America lives in situations like that. And to this day, in spite of all the talk and all the efforts of people who claim to care.
Right. So you talk about getting an organic tomato being super difficult. So what was your diet when you were growing up?
Oh, well, there were a lot of fast food places in those days. It was even before McDonald's and stuff would invest. And so you could get, pizza and fried chicken and hot dogs, really a lot of those. I was actually thinking about it. I remember being little and opening up a box of Jell-O, pouring hot water into it to dissolve it, throwing a few ice cubes in it to cool it down, and then pouring puffed rice breakfast cereal in there, and then that was my breakfast.
Okay. Yeah.
And that story, although it might sound sad or whatever, was extremely common.
Yeah, it just feels like such an overlooked community, and the fact that, kids not being able to get nutrition to create the foundation for their health in the future is criminal, like you had said.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's actually just gotten worse, which is just amazing, because if you look at like Flint, Michigan, and there's I think a place in Southern Illinois, Granite City, where they have just horrible water problems and have for years, and no one really lifts a finger because these people don't contribute to political campaigns.
What type of water issues?
Well, in Flint, Michigan, they had the problem with the pipes, with the lead leaching into the pipes.
Oh.
And it got so bad where the government actually, shut down the water, and they had to bus in or truck in bottled
Fresh water.
Yeah. And then they took their time fixing it. And I don't even know if it's still fixed, since it's probably been 3 or 4 years. And then I just saw an article about, I can't remember if it was Canyonville or Granite City, but somewhere in Southern Illinois, close to East St. Louis, which is a very forgotten area. And they've had raw sewage in the water. I remember that from the late 80s, and it's still going on. And yeah, I know, I can see the look of shock on your face.
It's crazy because no one, not no one, but how come people don't know about this?
I'm not exactly sure why the media is hyper concerned with things that, from a certain worldview have no meaning at all to the vast majority of Americans' everyday life, or low-income Americans. I guess all Americans, because we're all on the same team, right?
Yeah.
So if you're on the team with someone, you shouldn't allow that. So if you looked at it like basic training, when they have someone who's not keeping up, they help them, they push them up the wall, and instead of just kind of sit them down and tell them to go away.
Yeah. And you had grown up also in a food desert.
Yeah, it was hard to get fresh food. So there was a lot of Koreans there, which made it, you develop a taste for kimchi and stuff because that's
Mhm.
the equivalent of fresh vegetables. But yeah, in the food desert, those have only increased as time has gone on. And you can see in the low-income communities, the metabolic syndrome, it's safe to say that drive-throughs cause far more deaths than drive-bys in the
Okay.
low-income neighborhoods.
It's just heartbreaking. I mean, to think, you have people who, single moms, you were raised by a single
Yeah,
mother.
single mom. She was
Um,
great.
you're living in an area where she's doing her best, and even with food stamps and government assistance, the food that's given to you isn't quality food
Right. So,
either.
so in those days, she didn't participate in that because there was a certain amount of shame associated with accepting anything from the government. Although I do remember the government cheese, which when I tell you this story, that'll be the end of anyone who's listening. Sorry, but you'd cut into the cheese and there were big white splotches in it, which is where the salt was because it was World War II cheese.
Okay. That's like no one talks about this. Like, I just don't understand. And so you have had, you grew up in a neighborhood that didn't have the access to the nutrients and foods that really you would need to be a healthy individual to then not have chronic disease in the future.
Mhm.
You had, a struggle. Anybody with a single parent, it is hard already. So that's difficult. And you had mentioned to me too that, you didn't get the opportunity to even graduate high school, right?
Yeah, and I was working by then, and it didn't make just a really lot of sense to be going to high school.
Because you need to make some money, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I think I was by myself when I was 13 or 14 or somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So my
And
mom helped. So because she took a job full time, meaning really full time, 24 hours,
right.
caring for a super wealthy person with Alzheimer's.
Okay. So she was gone a lot of the time.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. And so as you started to grow, you were working and you stumbled upon a group that really changed everything for you. What was the group called? An Acorn?
So it's called ACORN. It's the Association for Community Organizations now, and they ended up being a very controversial in the 2000s. When I was there, we were worried. So it was a group that did community organizing in low-income neighborhoods, which of course I was very comfortable in that environment, so I was good at it.
Mm-hmm.
And um, and then we would do things like in those days, just getting, if let's say there was a school and some children, there was a chronically bad intersection where children would occasionally get hit. So just getting a stop sign put up there would take an enormous effort of lobbying city people, and and once again, that's really a crime because in other neighborhoods, if there was even a close call, there'd be a stop sign up there the next day
And a crosswalk person.
and a crosswalk person. Yeah, which of course there was none of that.
In including the excluded. I mean, it's such a theme for you, and you were so used to doing everything in person and interacting individually with people, but then dun dun dun, COVID
Oh,
happened,
COVID, I know.
and that
Crazy.
changed everything for you. And you had mentioned to me that you had paid attention to your neighbors across the street that were like minimalist livers, and
Yeah.
it kind of started getting your wheels turning. So talk about your neighbors and then how you got into the sprouting.
Sure. So the way I first got into sprouting was that when I was in my teens, sometimes I would do like most teens, what would now be considered gig jobs, which for me was just doing some basic carpentry. And one of the guys I worked with also sold sprouts, and this is in 1989-ish or 90-ish at farmers markets. And he asked me if I wanted to help him once. And so I did, and then ended up helping him for a few years. And although it didn't pay huge, you'd get all of the sprouts at the end of the day, right? Because they can't resell them. And it really developed my palate for that kind of food, and also gave me I just noticed the difference, right? So your body is extremely resilient, and you can really overcome just about anything with the right diet and being outside enough and getting some sleep.
Yes.
So that was great. And then fast forward 30 years, and I'm not a dancer anymore. I'm wondering what I'm going to do. But I'm still, throughout all of that time, have kept sprouting my own food periodically. And then my neighbors, so the whole COVID thing happened and they shut everything down. And then it didn't take more than 2 or 3 days before a whole lot more birds were out and the animals were out. And I live in rural Oregon, and you could really tell a difference right away. And it was only a couple of days. And so I know that they weren't new, that they were just always there and always hiding, which makes me think that they live in fear, right? Which is horrible that sentient beings that we have to share this planet with spend most of their time living in fear.
Of us.
But yeah, I know, of us and our machines. But my neighbors, so I know they have a car because it's in their driveway, and I know that they have garbage because they have garbage cans, but I never see them in their car or see anything in the garbage can. But I'd always see them walking around, like they'd walk, which is about 2 miles to the store, and walk back with their couple of bags of groceries, which were very minimal. And I was like, wow, I wonder what it would be like if everyone could live a little bit more like those guys. And so I was trying to figure out ways that everyone could. And then I'm rinsing out my sprouts one day, and I was like, ding, let me just make this really easy for people. And so I looked at why people don't sprout. So the barriers to entry to that market was that it's kind of a messy process, or it can be if you do it wrong. It's hard to clean the stuff. So what I did was I invented a really super cool little kit that you can see on my website. And it keeps your counters dry, and we send you seeds every month. And so you don't have to worry about finding organic seeds anywhere. And it's really a way that people can enjoy fresh organic vegetables every single day, right? Because after the first 5 days, now you have a nice supply, and you can have a quarter cup or a cup every day. And then by the time you're out, there's a new supply coming. Mm-hmm. And the reason it's important to do that is because not only is metabolic syndrome, so there's 2 kinds of malnutrition, right? There's not getting enough calories and then getting all the wrong calories. And in America, we get all the wrong calories.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, and we definitely have to kind of work through that. And then the environmental impact of sprouting is you're using, no packaging, no refrigeration, no topsoil, no transportation pollution. So having a local farm is just really, and which everyone did for the entirety of human history till about 100 years ago, right? And so this is not a new concept of growing your own food. And then most of all for me would be that it would be a way for people who have zero chance at getting fresh organic food, a way for them to be able to enjoy fresh organic food every single day of their life if they want.
And you had said something to me that I thought was an interesting quote, about the golden arches.
Oh, yeah. Right. So the golden arches is basically the welcome to Chicago sign. Well, welcome to the hood is the golden arches.
Yeah, the McDonald's Golden Arches, and it, our world has, well, the U.S. has made it acceptable to have these fast food, low nutrient, nasty things put in our body, and it's become the
Yeah, they've
norm.
normalized it.
And what I love about what you're doing with sprouting, especially for the communities that are in food deserts, is that we can help normalize this healthy food and the healthy sprouting, and not make it this bougie thing that everyone can do
Yeah,
it.
no, absolutely. And it's really amazing to me that with all of the knowledge that we claim to have, that we can't figure out ways to, get people a little 2 by 2 foot space to plant a couple of tomatoes in, or really do anything to give some of our low income people, which is a really lot of people,
Yeah.
so a chance to feel a sense of ownership over their existence, right? So instead of waiting for the government to send money and then waiting to, so they can just take control of their own destiny. But you have to be able to give people the tools to do that. It is not magic. The pulling yourself by the bootstraps thing is just so crazy unrealistic. It's painful for me to hear it.
Yeah. And you touched on something that I think is really important. It's, giving them the platform and the way to make it easy. With your kits, you're actually including recipes and, all of that too, right?
Absolutely. So part of the challenge is the hyper palate of the American diet, right? So meaning salt and corn syrup and things like that. And
Salt and sugar.
right, I realized the other day that almost everything that you can buy in a convenience store is just a form of a cookie. So a cookie is sugar, wheat, and some kind of binder, like an egg or something,
Yeah.
right? And so
Mhm.
white bread, flour, sugar, binder. An
Yeah.
actual cookie, same thing. A cracker, same thing. Just they just experiment with the amount of of sugar they're going to put in things, but it's all basically the same thing. And then if you look at the things that you're able to drink, you're either getting watered down corn syrup, some bubbles in it to make it fun, or even worse is diet soda, which is literally a chemistry experiment inside of a bottle labeled for consumption.
The aspartame is so bad for you
Yeah.
in any diet.
The part of having a healthy organic diet is your body becomes more sensitive to those things, and so you get a greater awareness of the things that are good for you and the behaviors that are good for you and the ones that are less helpful.
So, I think you're just doing something so wonderful, breaking the barriers, making sure that people understand, that there is a way to make nutrition easy to do, making that impact, helping people feel good and healthier. And, you're doing, a couple of partnerships right now with the Climate Reality Project. Do you want to talk
Yeah.
a little bit about that?
So I got myself involved with these climate people, and the kind of work they do is very they're just amazing, in terms of their ability to process bureaucratically bills that are being introduced and sailing their way through Congress. And yeah, I learned so much from them about some of the ins and outs of legislation, because in my experience, we didn't need legislation or anything. We needed some just serious things to happen immediately, and which of course we also could use for the environment. But there's no way of making that happen. It's a little bit harder than getting a stop sign put up or tearing a building down. I think the environmentalists were until very recently kind of a bougie white thing, right? And it still is to a large degree, but they're really making efforts to be a little bit more inclusive and sensitive, because, for instance, they might want higher building standards for environmentally safe housing.
Mm-hmm.
But that's going to cost more. And the people who are going to pay that, the brunt of that, is the low income people who are predominantly, Black and Mexican around here. And that's just needs to be thought of.
Working with, this climate reality project and getting, the sprouts out to these food deserts, making sure that people have the opportunity to get nutrients, because sprouts are so good
Right.
for you. And, making it more normalized, that it's not a bougie thing. Like, we don't need normalized fast food. We need normalized nutrition, and everyone should have access to that. So I'm so thankful that you're starting this project. I think it's wonderful. And there's so many things that you can do. It doesn't have to be just sprouting, but like you said, a little mini garden for people who don't have access to go to the grocery store unless they drive 30, 40 minutes. And, a 7-Eleven hot dog is just not acceptable anymore. People need to just understand that there are people out there who don't have access to the nutrients and foods that they need. They don't necessarily have the money to go to Whole Foods and get organic, so building your own ecosystem within your own, home is such a beautiful, wonderful
or
idea.
community. So it's really a shame that these guys are such an anomaly that they make the national news. But there's a guy in Detroit who took a warehouse and built a hydroponic farm for actually food, not weed, and he does a really great job with that. And then there are pilot programs where if you use your SNAP card or food stamps at a farmer's market, they're overvalued, right? So you get $2 worth for every dollar you spend, but which is just an amazingly good idea. Sadly, a lot of those people won't be able to make it to a farmer's market. But
Right.
Probably the biggest thing they could do would be to kind of classify food as food. So right now with your food stamps, you can buy things that your grandparents would not recognize as food, right? Like a Twinkie or soda pop and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because if they were to change, then you would see those little stores that just have chips have maybe some produce and things like that, because people wouldn't be able to spend their money buying chips.
Right. Yes, I agree with you. And so for everybody out there that want to, get a hold of you, find you on social media, website, where can everybody hook up with you?
So it's www.organicsproutbox.com, and just come on by and look around. There's going to be a lot of really, really good recipes, a lot of nutritional information, a way to order the kits if you're willing and able to do that. And I just love everyone out there. You guys need to know that. And let's hold hands and work together as a team to stop metabolic syndrome. And I know that sounds boring, but it's kind of like
it does not sound boring.
It's the malaria of America.
Okay. Yeah. And I'll put all of that information in the show notes. Everybody will be able to have clickable links to find you. And really, I just have to commend you for all the work that you've done since, you were a young man. There were so many ways that you could go coming from lower income.
Oh, I went some of those
Chicago.
ways. We just didn't go over those.
Okay, not talking about that, but you ended up, really making something wonderful with your life. And thank you for your contribution to the community, and we are looking forward to seeing where you go with this. So thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, eat your sprouts.
Eat your sprouts, guys. All right, we'll talk soon.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you all for joining us on another episode of Conscious Basket. And just a small reminder, Conscious Basket is not just hosting interviews. We are in the process of launching our marketplace, where our goal is to make it super easy for you to make conscious decisions about what you're buying by knowing the origin of the products and services. We're using our technology to highlight a transparent supply chain with our vendors, which means you know what goes into those products and where they came from to make sure those things you buy don't weigh on your conscience. And to ensure this peace of mind, we have developed a score to rank the sustainability of the purchase. For instance, how much water is being used, trees saved, animal lives, human rights, and so on. So, if you're an entrepreneur with a sustainable product and would be interested in being on the platform, please email us at info@consciousbasket.com. Also, if you're an entrepreneur, thought leader, or academic that would like to be a guest on the show, please drop us a line at the same email. And if you're just interested in taking a closer look at us, you can also take a look at our website, which is www.consciousbasket.com. And as always, you can explore the topics we discussed in the show notes and find many more topics on all of our social platforms. So give us a follow on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn @ConsciousBasket. If you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to our show and leave us a comment with any key takeaways. I read them all. Share with your friends, family, post a screenshot on your social about the podcast so that we can extend our reach to help propel our movement forward. Finally, just another small reminder that perfectionism is not the goal here. In my opinion, perfectionism is what gets in the way of all of us collectively picking what I like to call your thing, which is whatever you choose to make a positive impact on this world. Thank you again for joining us.